Jared's question is up next. It says, I know the money guy advice against trying to time the market, but how do you feel about making adjustments based on larger trends, like dollar cost averaging less into sectors we anticipate will decline?
Dollar cost averaging less into sectors we think.
Well, that's more of an asset allocation question. That's a different.
It is.
I think that's a good differentiator.
But I think a lot of people ask this question. I think this is good. So I want to think through like what would be a great way to answer this, because I do think part of it depends on where you are in your financial journey, Jared. And this is what I mean by that. Like when you're early on in your wealth building stage, like and you're just starting out and you're maxing out your Roth and you're following the financial order of operations. Brian, we hold up the thing. And you're following the financial order of operations and you're working through the 9 tried and true steps and you're trying to build up. I don't think that you really just spend a ton of time thinking about your asset allocation or spend a ton of time thinking about which sectors are undervalued and overvalued. What you really ought to focus on is the single most important part of your wealth building journey is your savings rate. You ought to be focusing on that. Now, if you're someone who is further along in your wealth building journey, your portfolio has kind of reached that critical mass, I don't think there's anything wrong with moving from like a generalized solution like a target retirement index fund to a more specialized solution where you have a portfolio that you've designed or someone has helped you design that fits your unique risk tolerance, risk to capacity, goals, time horizon, savings rate, all those sorts of things. But this is what I think you have to be careful of. And I think people are amazed to hear this. If you are a 40-year-old with $1 million and you work through an appropriate portfolio based on, time horizon, risk tolerance, risk capacity, all these things, and it's determined that this portfolio is the portfolio that you should have, and I'm going to say it says 60-40, right? You should have a 60-40 portfolio. Just because the market shifts or just because the market changes or just because something moves inside of sectors that you think is interesting probably doesn't mean that that allocation that's intact for you is not still the appropriate and correct allocation. So I get real nervous when people talk about moving into sectors and out of sectors, because there's a difference in like tweaking around the portfolio rebalancing edges and actually trying to time the market. And I think that's a dangerous game that people play and they lose sight of.
Yeah, because I think you did a good job of talking about the different asset classes. One of the things that I felt like was Jared was nibbling on a little bit was that we just did a show on dollar cost averaging versus lump sum. Mm-hmm. And I noticed a lot of people in the comments were like, yeah, but sometimes it can pay to time the market. And I did want to clarify, because we kind of shared our new money guy rule is that if this is a large portion of your net worth, mm-hmm. and it's life-changing. So, think about if you sold land, a business, or, you had an inheritance come your way, and it was such a large amount, then you probably do want a dollar cost average over like 5 months and then extend that out depending upon the size of it. But I will tell you, we do have, and it's just, we can only cover so much, guys.
Sure.
I think there's nothing wrong with having what I call dynamic dollar cost averaging. I worked on a concept with Fritz over at Retirement Manifesto during the last downturn, and we've even implemented this with a lot of clients, is that when you have a dollar cost averaging, say over 10 months, it's like $1 million over 10 months, but then you go into bear market status where the market loses 20%. I don't have a problem, because it's driven by the historical data, that if now that it's lost over 20%, if you want to accelerate a month earlier on your dollar cost averaging, that's okay. And then every 5% additional loss, if you want to bring another month forward of your dollar cost averaging, that stuff works. It's just that I get nervous about talking about that on content, because if you don't have the discipline to understand what I'm talking about with that, then it could go horribly wrong, mm-hmm. Because now you've taken rules which are rigid and you've added some grayness to it. But I still think it's worth noting, because I know there's a lot of financial mutants, and I want you guys to know what we think about and what we do for clients, and and all the things so that you can train your mindset to just become even better with how you manage your money. I don't know if that's completely, because Jared went a lot of ways. He talked about dollar cost averaging. He talked about sectors. Mm-hmm. we kind of gave him an all-you-can-eat buffet, and hopefully we got him an answer in there.
Look, there's tons of comments pouring in about, but in March of 2020, you really should have loaded, you should have loaded up. And that's not incorrect, right? But we're talking about macro, micro. What you're talking about is a macro to say, hey, market's down greater than, there's nothing wrong with still buying those low-cost index funds, allocating across the equity spectrum. That's a different conversation saying, ooh, you know what looks hot right now? Biotech. I'm going to sell my healthcare and I'm going to go buy biotech, or I'm going to go, fill in the blank. That's where, in my opinion, it gets a little bit wonky. That's a different decision. Oh, market's down, there's opportunity. I'm going to save a little bit more. I'm going to put a little bit more into my dollar cost averaging strategy. Those, in my mind, are not the same. And you need to be careful that you don't fall into that timing position.
Yeah, where you're trying to get out and then get back in.
Right.
That's scary stuff.